It was another Tuesday night of multiple ranked teams on the road at unranked teams. Some of them handled it very well. Purdue, Kansas. Others, not so much.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for joining us to get your college basketball content every single day. You everydayers, we want to thank you as always for being with us. If you're new to the show and you want to be a bigger part of this Locked On College Basketball community, we have a Discord chat where we're talking college basketball all day long. We'd love you to come join us. It's free, so easy. The link for that is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Coming up on the show today, we do want to very briefly get you ready for tonight, Wednesday night's games, but we're going to do a fun exercise later in the show where we rank the remaining undefeated Power 6 teams in conference play. That'll be a lot of fun. But first, we got a lot of Tuesday night action to get to. And to do that, joining us for the very first time on Locked On College Basketball is Mr. Cameron Salerno. Cam, great to have you on. Cameron writes for CBS Sports about both college football and college basketball. Obviously, we're talking college basketball today. You can catch his weekly column talking about the freshman watch. Great stuff there, and we'll get into that on another time when Cam is with us on the show. But Cam, we want to get into talking about these ranked teams that were on the road. Last week, it was a big-time struggle, including for Houston and Purdue and Kansas and everybody. But on Tuesday night, thankfully, Purdue and Kansas were able to handle it very well. Purdue goes into a very difficult environment in Assembly Hall and just blitzes the Hoosiers 87-66. Cam, what a performance for Purdue to say, you know what, UConn shouldn't be number one. Maybe it should still be us.
I agree. And also, too, at times, Purdue has looked like the clear-cut best team. And, there is the argument for UConn. And it is interesting because at this point in the season, there's probably, many variables and who's the best team, who's this team. And after all the upsets, there's really not a clear-cut number one team. It could have been, a few weeks ago, Kansas or Arizona. And, Arizona's kind of in a weird stretch. I wrote about today for CBS Sports about how they're kind of in a funk. But, the loss to Washington State isn't really necessarily a bad loss because I think Washington State is off to a really good start and they could be a potential tournament team. But at the same time, too, I think going back to Purdue, that's an impressive win. Good bounce back after a loss to Nebraska a few days ago. And, I think haven't seen any official odds, but I think Zach Edey's a pretty consensus favorite to the National Player of the Year. I don't think there's anyone that's going to catch him unless, something happens in the next, month or two.
Yeah, I love that at FanDuel, the odds right now for for National Player of the Year, it's like got a whole list, but at the top of that list is Zach Edey, yes or no. And that's part of the big, so clearly, yeah. In fact, Edey has a very Zach Edey game against Indiana on Tuesday night, 33 points, 14 boards, 11 of 12 from the free throw line. Cam, one of the things for me is Purdue still needs to get more from Trey Kaufman-Renn. He only had 3 points in this game, but thankfully got big additions from Fletcher Lawyer and Lance Jones, who scored 19 and 17 respectively. And that's nice to get on a night when Braden Smith only gets 5 points himself, 2 of 14 from the field, but still dishes out 9 assists. What do you think about just that production? I feel like we get this way up and down from Trey Kaufman-Renn. Zach Edey is always steady, but just need more from some of those other guys.
Well, first off, I want to say I think the most impressive aspect of that game was not any point that Zach Edey scored, not any rebound, but how about him diving for a loose ball when they're up by that many points?
Yeah.
Man, it's like that's just a gritty play. So kudos to him. But I really think Braden Smith is this X factor for Purdue. When he gets hot, it is nice having that production. And obviously, Fletcher Lawyer has been really good too. Jones has been awesome for them at times this season. So it really comes down to, not even today, not tomorrow, not next month, in March, of what production are you going to get from your other guys. And that's kind of the key. Like, I mean, it's kind of, as they say in March, it's guards take over.
That's right.
You can have production from Lawyer, Smith, like it's going to help them a bunch. And obviously it's going to help them get out of the first round. So, I really think, like I said, Lawyer's the X factor, and, Braden Smith is too. I mean, I think those guys are going to be huge come March. And, I'm looking, Smith only scored 5 points in 36 minutes, but he had 9 assists and 6 rebounds. So
that's right.
Boys.
Cam, let's go to Stillwater, where Kansas absolutely did work, 90-66. And it's like, hey, look, just Oklahoma. Okay, sure, fine. But last week, Kansas lost at UCF. So there are no gimmies in Big 12 play. Here's the big story from this game for me, Cam. All five starters for Kansas were in double figures, even from their shooting guard position. And that's been my big issue with the Jayhawks, is what you got in all the other 4 starters. We've had Johnny Furphy in the starting lineup for a couple games now, and he does work in this one. 15 points, 5 of 6 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3. He adds 7 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. This man from down under that reclassed to come to Kansas this year, could he be the answer at shooting guard?
Potentially. I mean, I think honestly, kind of, I don't want to call him a disappointment because, I think that's pretty heavy maybe word to use, but Marco Jackson, man, I think I've been kind of disappointed with him. I mean, I did our rankings at the start of the season of like who are going to be the top impact freshmen, and he was really high up on the list. I mean, it's a natural fit. I mean, Kansas needed a wing. He, 5-star recruit. I forget what his exact ranking was, but I think he was a top 10 recruit coming out of high school. And so it's kind of been weird to see, Kansas freshman wings have thrived potentially in the past, even their older experience wings too, like Abachi like a few years ago. And so I think that's kind of a question mark. But going back to your point, I think like having 5 guys in the starting lineup who can all score double digits on a given night is huge for them, especially because when you have such a reliable big man, Hunter Dickinson. And, I will say this like about Hunter Dickinson, he doesn't play exactly like him at all, not even close. But like obviously I watched the Sacramento Kings a lot. It's the team I grew up watching, and he does have a little Sabonis to him. I mean,
yay. I wondered if you were going there.
I know, yeah. I mean, like they're both lefties, so that's not the only comparison, but they kind of play like that point forward type role on occasion. So I mean, Dickinson's been awesome. Like if Zach Edey was not in college, I think Dickinson would probably be one of the top 3 front runners for National Player of the Year.
Yeah. Love that. Cam, let's switch from the ranked teams that did take care of business on the road at unranked teams to the ones that just did not do so. We had 4 of them in particular, 2 more Big 12 teams. Baylor, number 9, loses at Kansas State, 68-64 in overtime. 19, TCU loses at Cincinnati, 81-77. 11, Wisconsin loses at Penn State, 87-83. And 16, Utah State loses at New Mexico, 99-86. Cam, let's go to those Big 12 games first here, and we'll go pretty quick on it. But here's the story for me with the Baylor game. Jerome Tang is now 3-0 against Scott Drew in his first 2 years there for Kansas State.
I think he's 10-0 in overtime. I think that was a stat that someone threw up.
That's crazy. It's insane. Yeah. And here's all we need to know about Baylor's struggles in this game. They come in as the number 1 3-point shooting team in the nation, and they shoot just 5 of 28 from 3. That's 17.9%. That ain't going to win you many games on the road, Mr. Cameron.
I agree. And also, too, going back to the TCU Cincinnati game, like we were texting back and forth at the end of that game, and
we were.
That's literally one of the craziest finishes. Just like, I mean, it was an uneventful regulation finish, but the fact that there was a foul, missed 2 free throws, and the other end misses the front end. Like, come on. Like,
it was the ineptitude bowl. It was like no one wanted to win at the end of regulation, dude.
Make your free throws, kids.
Yeah, make your free throws on both teams. Neither team could do it. Wild stuff. For Cincinnati, here's the thing for me with Cincinnati. They're 2-2 in Big 12 play, but they could just as easily be 4-0 right now. They lost to Texas by 1, had a lead late, and then just lost at Baylor by 3 in a game. We could be looking at Cincinnati as the Big 12 leader early on here, Cam. That's crazy.
And just to touch on that too, real quick, like shout out to the new Big 12 members. I mean, they're
Honestly,
all of them had their moment in the first 2 weeks. I mean, obviously UCF knocked off Kansas. Cincinnati gets a win tonight. BYU looking pretty good at the start of the year, and also, building off Big 12 play. And then obviously, I think we all know about Houston, even though they're in a kind of a slump right now. I mean, they're the last unbeaten team remaining. I know that's your thing. You love the unbeaten. So it was cool to track. But I know we all predicted CBS who was going to be the last unbeaten. I went, James Madison, because
that was me too. I had James Madison. Yeah,
I thought they had a pretty easy, schedule. Then they lost, and then also that same day, Ole Miss got crushed by Tennessee. So yeah. So shout out to Houston. I mean, Kelvin Sampson. I mean, he's
they'll be fine.
They could put me out there, and I think they'd be fine.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah.
Coach is.
Now, speaking of conference undefeateds, the Mountain West, man, has been one of the fun surprise conferences of the early part of this season. And we came into Tuesday night's action with 2 remaining undefeated teams in conference play with the Mountain West. That was Utah State and Boise State. Unfortunately, both lost on Tuesday night. Boise State, man, like they were looking great. They had just moved into Joe Lunardi's field on Tuesday, and then they lose at home to UNLV. You can't do that. And then Utah State, though, at New Mexico. I know that's a ranked at an unranked, but still a very understandable loss going to New Mexico and losing to one Coach Pitino won on Tuesday night. The other didn't. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the Lobos, very respectable. And honestly, Cam, you and I were talking about this earlier. We think the Mountain West is going to have more teams in the dance than the Pac-12.
I agree. So I'll set it now. Over under 4.5 teams.
For the Mountain West?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going over.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, 100%. Folks, if you're not dialed in on this conference, like, you need to be right now. Everyone, especially with these 2 losses on Tuesday, everyone is packed in together. It's a lot of fun.
It is funny, though, because I remember they sent 2 Mountain West teams to Sacramento for March Madness. So I got to watch Utah State last year, got to watch Boise State. So, I mean, it's a fun conference. I mean, obviously Nevada, like, good for them. Like, they were really good 5 or 6 years ago. And, they're looking pretty good this year. And then UNLV, like, they're kind of a sneaky team for me. Like, I think they can be good. I mean, they obviously beat huge win. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. And, in Colorado State, man, like, they're 14-3, 2-2 in Mountain West play. Nevada, I mean, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams with over 14 wins. Like, that's pretty crazy.
Mountain West looking good, folks. Again, check it out. Now, Cameron and I have already had all this great conversation, and we haven't even yet got to the only ranked on ranked matchup of Tuesday night. And we're going to have to talk about that here in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by LinkedIn. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. Hey, what's one thing I can do to take my business to the next level this year? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why they've created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just some other job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, making hiring insanely easy when you have that many quality candidates. Man, this is all of this is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the right time or resources to be able to hire. But thankfully, with LinkedIn Jobs, that process is intuitive, it's quick, and it's easy. So post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Isaac Shade, Cameron Salerno here with you on Wednesday's episode of Locked On College Basketball. We've just been looking at all these ranked teams that went on the road on Tuesday night to play unranked teams, but now we got to get to our only AP ranked on ranked game of Tuesday night. That was number 20 BYU hosting Iowa State. And Cam, you just talked about it a minute ago. These newcomers to the Big 12 are doing well by themselves. BYU just recently got their first ever Big 12 win, and now they do it against an Iowa State team that's had a good week themselves, 84-72 in this one. Cameron, for me, I would say that BYU needed this win more desperately than did the Cyclones.
I agree with you. And also, too, like they struggled to the start of conference play, lost to Cincinnati, lost to Baylor, then bounced back against UCF and Iowa State. And kind of to touch on it, too, it is just one more point about the Big 12 newcomers.
Yeah.
In football, it was kind of a, not a disaster, I would say, for the newcomers, but, not really great. And, they're –
No, let's say disaster. It was disaster.
Yeah. Well, they're fitting in. And like, I was kind of thinking about this the other day, too, how fun it's going to be when Arizona and Arizona State and Colorado and Utah join the Big 12. And it's just going to, the Big 12 is literally a dogfight every single night.
That's right.
Like, there is no easy game. I mean, Oklahoma State is the only winless team in the conference right now, and they're going to be a tough out because, when they play Oklahoma or they play literally any other team in this conference, it's going to be a dogfight. But it is interesting because you look at the Big 12 standings, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ranked teams, and Kansas State is 3-1, and they're not ranked. So shout out to Rome.
Something's got to give. Well, we were just talking about the Coach Pitino that won on Tuesday night, but Papa did not win on Tuesday night. Seton Hall, man, is building themselves an at-large resume, and I love it. They win at home over St. John's, 80-65. Dude, the Pirates are 6-1 in Big East play. UConn is the only other one-loss team. They have a chance tonight, Wednesday night, to get even. They got a massive game against Creighton, so we'll see how that one goes. But look, Cameron, Shaheen Holloway building something really special at Seton Hall in just year 2.
And how cool is it that he gets to do it at the school he played at? Just being able to go back there and compete in the Big East where, you have the reigning national champion, you have a Marquette team, a Creighton team that both were potential Final Four candidates coming of the year. And for them to be, at the top of the Big East standings is incredible. And it's a testament to his coaching.
Right.
They're no fluke. They are a team that has a very legitimate chance to get in that NCAA tournament. And they should be if they keep up this play.
But on the flip side of that, in this game, we've a lot of us have talked about St. John's as a probable at-large team. They got some work to do at this point, so we'll keep watching how Rick Pitino's first St. John's team does. Cam, let's go to a game that tipped off earlier on Tuesday. Tennessee wins at home against Florida, 85-66. I mean, we had some games on Tuesday that were just obliterations, but the storyline in this one, as with every Tennessee game, is Dalton Knecht. This team could not score to save their lives last year. I went in on Rick Barnes' team all the time. No longer, my friend. Dalton Knecht in this game, 39 points on 13 of 23 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3, 9 of 9 from the free throw line, and he added 8 rebounds to go with it. I know that you are a Big Sky aficionado. My man, did you ever think that Dalton Knecht playing at Northern Colorado last year would be doing this on the SEC stage right now?
So I'm a Big Sky sicko, as they would say. And, the production and the numbers were there last year in Northern Colorado. But for him to step in right away and play in the SEC and probably be the front runner to be the SEC Player of the Year with Wade Taylor is honestly incredible. He's a guy who has gone from fringe NBA player to a potential lottery top 20 prospect. And just his rise has been incredible. I mean, I really think, I don't want to jinx it or anything, but I really think this is the year that Tennessee can get to a Final Four. Rick Barnes has the personnel. Everyone knows about the historic kind of chokes they've had during his tenure at Tennessee. but I really think Connect is going to shine in the NCAA tournament. And if I had to pick a team from the SEC to make the Final Four, it'd be Tennessee.
Well, I hope so, because they were one of my preseason picks. So speak it into existence. Let it be so. Now, look, you just mentioned one of the other big names for SEC Player of the Year, Wade Taylor. And my man, Cameron, what a game we saw in Bud Walton Arena between Arkansas and Texas A&M. Look, if you had told me preseason that 4 games into SEC play, both Texas A&M and Arkansas would be 1-3, I would have laughed in your face and probably spit a little bit. But here we are, and both of these teams are 1-3. A just silly game on Tuesday night. If I remember correctly, Arkansas led this game 30-10 in the first half. Texas A&M comes back to get a 1-point lead on a Wade Taylor, like Marcus Page looking 3 from the national championship game a couple years ago that is now forgotten to history, just like the Marcus Page shot, because we had Chris Jenkins in the national championship game. But on Tuesday night, we had a Tremont Mark bucket to end this thing.
Yeah, that ending was insane. Like, it was, I honestly thought at first, like when I watched the replay over again, like before they inbounded the ball, I thought it was either going to be an illegal screen or a foul. Like, it just looked like there's too much contact near where Wade Taylor shot the ball. But, you know, obviously Texas A&M lost, but they are coming off probably their best win of the year against Kentucky last weekend. And, you know, Wade Taylor really struggled in the last 3 games coming in that game from distance. I think he was 4-27.
Yeah, he was struggling.
And so he hit, I think, 6 threes against Kentucky. He looked like the guy who was tabbed the SEC preseason player of the year. And I really think it's going to be a 2-man race between him and Connect for SEC player of the year.
I love that. And what a showdown between those guys that hit the last 2 shots on Tuesday night. Wade Taylor finishes with 41. Of course, he took 32 shots to get there, but, you know, we'll just put that aside. And then Tremont Mark had 35 for himself, and he only needed 15 shots. How do you achieve that, you ask me? Because homie went 17 of 22 from the free throw line, Cameron. That's absolutely
that's NBA stuff right there.
Oh, I mean, it's like, yeah, the beard getting into it after all that. How about the state of Georgia just wiping the face of South Carolina off the face of the planet on Tuesday night? Georgia went to South Carolina, got out with a 74-69 victory. Georgia Tech goes to Clemson, wins a double overtime game, 93-90. And Cameron, I got to eat this one, because I have been saying it to anyone who would listen that this Clemson team was finally legit with PJ Hall and Chase Hunter and Joe Girard coming over from Syracuse. But after their 11-1 start, they've gone 1-4. So Cameron, I raise my hand and I say to you and everyone else listening, I was wrong. And I don't know what's happening with this team, but Brad Brownell's got to get something figured out if Clemson does not want to find themselves in the NIT yet again.
PJ Hall's such a beast, man. Like, he's so good.
Yeah.
He's so good. But just like that, go back to SEC, like, maybe I'm the only one confused, and I don't think I am. Like, the bottom, like, middle SEC is, like, so confusing because you have South Carolina, you have Georgia, and then you have, obviously, the 2 teams that are so undefeated, Auburn and Alabama, who, mind you, I mean, Auburn just got ranked, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then Alabama has been unranked for a few weeks now. But it's just so weird because I still will say I think it's going to be Kentucky or Tennessee who wins the league. I mean, we'll get into that later. But at the same time, like, just Georgia's win, or sorry, rather, Oregon's win over Georgia in the start of the season is looking really good right now because Georgia has been pretty good. And so shout out to them. I mean, and then another head scratcher is Florida. I thought Florida was, on paper, they have talent, and, you know, they just been struggling. Obviously, they struggled against Tennessee.
Man. Let's move to the ACC quickly. I'm just going to run us through this one, and then we'll keep on moving. Really interesting game between Wake Forest and NC State. Wake was up 10 at the half. NC State comes blitzing back, ends up winning the game. But the whole thing was unfortunately marred by like a bunch of technicals and ejections in the last minute of the game. I'm not going to relitigate it right now, but folks, go watch the highlights of that. And I also want to shout out in passing the nation's #1 scoring team, and that is Samford, who go on the road to Western Carolina on Tuesday night. Both teams 4-0 in SoCon action. I mean, we're talking automatic qualifying stuff that we got to pay attention to here. Samford on the road wins 75-71. Our guy Acor gets a career-high 35 points, Cameron. Great stuff. Folks, if you're not locked into the SoCon, get there right now. Shouts to Dr. Joe Peterson, my guy that's a professor at Samford. We got to keep moving, though. Cameron, we are down to just 5 Power 6 teams who are undefeated in conference play. Which of them is the most likely to win their conference regular season crown? We are about to rank those for you, folks. Hang tight. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs just kicked off last weekend, and there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is very easy to use, and there's a whole bunch of different ways to bet, things like same-game parlays or a new Explore tab that can help you find a whole bunch of different bets. Or maybe you want to look at conference regular season odds. Let's take the Big 12. Kansas plus 260, Baylor plus 320, Houston plus 380, TCU and Texas Tech tied at plus 850, and Iowa State at plus 1300. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. This episode of Locked On College Basketball is also brought to you by Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from a lot of the crazy realities of life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for when real life actually happens? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if someone I loved was getting sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, there's Jase Medical. They have this thing called the Jase case, which is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, skin infections, and others. It could happen to any of us. So visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispersed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than right now. So go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. All right, folks, coming into Tuesday night's action, we had 7 Power 6 teams that were still undefeated. Alabama won on Tuesday night, but 2 other of our schools got knocked off. We already talked about Baylor losing at Kansas State, and then Wisconsin losing at Penn State. So we're down to just 5. Quick note, by the way, on Alabama, Mark Sears tweaked an ankle on Tuesday night, but Coach Oates said after the game that he'd be ready to go for Tennessee on Saturday. So, Cameron, of the 6 Power 6 conferences, the ACC's lone remaining undefeated team is North Carolina, who's in action tonight against Louisville. So we'll see what happens there. The Big 12 is down to only Texas Tech. The Pac-12 is down to only Oregon. As you mentioned earlier, the SEC still has Alabama and Auburn. No undefeateds in Big East play. After Wisconsin lost, no more undefeateds in Big Ten play. So Cameron, here's the exercise we're going to do. Rank in order from most to least likely of these 5 teams to win their conference regular season crown. I'll let you go first, and then I'll tell you where you're wrong and I'm right.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I texted you my rankings this morning, and then I realized, 2 teams lost today, so I had to think it a little bit. And I was thinking about it a little bit more, and I was really okay. So I have my consensus number 1, it's North Carolina, just based off, the ACC. I think it's really, like I said, coming in the year, it was a 2-horse race between them and Duke. I think they could have the personnel. They've gotten better on offense. And, they just – I think, Caleb Love, bless his heart. He's awesome. And I love watching him play. But he reminds me of a player, I watched a lot when I watched the Kings back, a few years ago. His name's Buddy Hield. Bell. He's a guy who has very high volume shooting games, and You live and die by it. So, anyways, that's number one. Number two, I'm going with Oregon. I really am believing the hype. I think Arizona is kind of on a dip right now. I mean, Jackson Shellstat, I mean, he's been great for them this year. The guy who, was a 4-star recruit, but also, he's their leading scorer. So that's been good. Number three, I'm going to go with Auburn because,
Ooh.
it's kind of a spicy one. I'm debating. I was debating Auburn, Alabama. So Alabama will be 4 just because I don't know. I'm kind of torn. Like I said, I still think Kentucky or Tennessee wins the SEC. So, doesn't really matter, I guess, in that way. And then number 5, Texas Tech. I don't think they're going to win the Big 12. The Big 12 is too good. Kansas, Houston, any of those teams, Baylor. I just do not see Texas Tech win the Big 12. So.
Yeah, what's funny is our rankings are very, very similar. I had North Carolina at the top for all the same reasons you did. You talked about their offense. I'm going to talk about their defense, which is currently, I mean, I haven't checked it as of the end of Tuesday night's games, but going into Tuesday, it was 5th in the nation in defensive efficiency, with that offense being top 15 as well. So many ACC teams are looking vulnerable. It's weird. I can't figure it out. Duke has looked a little bit vulnerable on the road, although Duke's schedule is a little bit easier, but I still think that North Carolina, for all the reasons you said. The one flip that I have differently from you, Cam, is Auburn and Oregon. I have Auburn second on my list, and here's why. Auburn gets to play Vandy twice. Vandy is the 3rd worst Power 6 conference team, according to KenPom, just slightly ahead of Louisville and way ahead of DePaul, who's just absolutely terrible. But also, Auburn only has to play Kentucky once, and that's at home, and only has to play Tennessee once, and that's on the road. So give me Auburn as the second most likely of these teams to actually win their conference regular season. That said, I still think it'll be Tennessee in the SEC. And then I've got Oregon third on my list. I love everything you said. I love Shellstat. I'm right with you there. But man, they've got a 2-game lead over Arizona right now. And as you said earlier, Arizona looks a little bit vulnerable. We live and die with the Caleb Love experience. I'd like to see a little more of the shots more evenly distributed for Tommy Lloyd's team, but that's all right there. But I mean, I think you and I both feel good about Colorado, especially as they get Cody Williams back healthy and Tristan Da Silva back healthy. But still, look, Oregon has a 3-game lead over them. They've got a 3-game lead over USC and Utah and Washington. They've got a 4-game lead over them. So I could very much see Oregon holding on to this thing. And in some respects, because of that, could be the number 1 team on either of our lists. I had Baylor 4th before they lost. I had Wisconsin 5th before they lost. And then so I've got Alabama actually 4th on my list, and then Texas Tech dead last for all the same reasons you said. But man, it's great to see Texas Tech getting off to that start. Cam, any pushback on my list?
No, I agree with you. I'm very intrigued with Oregon just because, coming in, I remember vividly watching. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It feels like a year ago, literally. But I remember watching that game against Georgia. I was like, I think this Oregon team is going to be pretty good this year. I mean, Dante, I think, I want to say he had like 19 points and 21 rebounds that game, and then he got hurt, and then he missed the last 14 games, and now he's back. He's back. Cal, or he played against Cal last week and played 17 minutes. So his workload's going to increase, and so that's a big development for Oregon. And kind of just really going off tangent, I think they're kind of in a similar situation as Mississippi State because Smith was out for almost the first 10, 15 games of the season. And now he's back. He's ramped up. He's starting. Josh Howard's been awesome this year. He was our freshman of the week this week. He had a huge performance against Tennessee. So that's what I'm saying. The SEC is really weird. I really if you had to tell me, okay, Auburn or Alabama's going to win the SEC, who's going to be? I probably would say Auburn just because,
Agreed.
I think they have the personnel to win the SEC, but also at the same time too, there's a lot of good teams at the top, and kind of in the same sense as the Big 12, I think it's going to be, teams are going to beat up on each other, and it's going to be a few loss SEC champ as opposed to someone who dominates the whole conference.
Yeah, 100%. Man, that's a super fun exercise. Folks, if you're listening or watching, we'd love to hear your list of how you would rank these 5 remaining conference undefeateds in the Power 6 conferences in terms of most likely to win the regular season. Very quickly, let me just fly through a list of some games for Wednesday night. The big ticket one we mentioned earlier, Creighton is at UConn, the nation's brand new number 1 team. That's 7 Eastern on FS1. Cameron just mentioned Mississippi State. They're traveling to Lexington tonight, 7 Eastern on ESPN2. We've also got Texas Tech at Houston, USC at Arizona, FSU at Miami, a little Florida battle there, Nevada at San Diego State. We talked about that Mountain West earlier. It's a lot of fun, big opportunity to watch it. Good luck to you East Coasters because that game don't tip till 11 Eastern time on CBS Sports. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you. Looking forward to having you back again sometime soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Folks, that's it for today's episode of Locked On College Basketball. Again, come join us in the Discord. It's free, and the link to that is available in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe on audio and video, rate and review the show. Smash the like button if you're watching so we know you are here. And also, don't forget to vote for us on the Sports Podcast Awards, where our show is up for Best Basketball Podcast. The link for that is in the show notes as well. As always, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.